So today I want to talk about Puck, and you may be wondering why I want to talk about Puck. Because even though the world of Berserk is wide and varied, it's a dark fantasy and Puck is just weird in that setting. He's a happy-go-lucky, kind of jokey kind of character, and he's usually used for comedic effect for many times in the story. And I get it. But as I looked more and more into the story this month and I explored various parts of the series in ways I haven't done before, even though I've read it 2 or 3 times, the fact that I'm reading it more in terms of reviewing and studying instead of just as a popcorn flicks has made me take double takes and have newfound opinions about the series. But Puck is strange. He's there, but not sure why exactly he's there. So today I didn't have enough really to talk about Puck and to make a highly detailed analytical video, but I still want to talk about him because I think he's an interesting enough character that warrants his own little presentation. So let's dive in and take a look at Puck. So Puck is an eccentric little pixie or elf, though elf is usually like the species name and he's mainly seen as a fairy or a pixie. And pixies and fairies are usually like this childish and happy-go-lucky and playful sort of type of people, but Puck is strange even among them, which makes him very unique in terms of any sort of character. He's very exploratory. He doesn't have, while a lot of elves and a lot of fairies have a lot of attachment to their original home of Elfheim, Puck is different. He doesn't really want to go home. He doesn't really need to go home. He's the kind of guy who doesn't really mind if he has to go home, but he doesn't have a true calling for anywhere, which is what really partially allowed him to meet Guts for the first time. Now, timeline-wise, Puck is not technically Guts' first companion, as Guts went through the whole Golden Age with the Band of the Hawk or Band of the Falcon, depending on what translation you read. But story-wise, in terms of how it was presented to us, Puck is technically the first companion where they met after Guts saved him from this tavern where a bunch of bandits had captured Puck and were thinking of different ways to utilize him. Guts saved him, not necessarily out of goodwill or out of, good intentions, but, the bandits pissed off the wrong guy and Guts showed them who's boss. And even though at the beginning the two didn't necessarily get along, with Puck wanting to thank Guts for having helped him by following him and healing him, Guts was really not in the right place in his life to really speak to people and want to speak to people. He eventually did mellow out and allow Puck to follow him around, mainly because he saw him more as like this emergency medicine that was very useful. In terms of other firsts, Puck is also technically our first connection to the astral world. Even though the Behelit comes really close soon after, Puck is technically the first time we see something related to the astral world, as we know that elves or fairies are kind of in that like middle zone between the physical world and the astral world prior to the events of a world tree. And I don't think it would be wrong to say that the astral world will play a bigger role in the future. And is there a reason why Puck was our first introduction to the astral world? I don't know, because the story itself is going in places that could easily incorporate Puck, but I could also just use Puck as just, a transitionary point. It doesn't really have him play too big of a role. It's hard to say one way or another, and it's I really don't know where Puck is going to go from here. Interestingly, even though, like I said, Puck has been introduced to us since the prologues and is technically the longest running Guts companion. In fact, I think just in terms of chapter count, technically Guts and Puck has spent more time with each other than even Griffith or Casca. I suppose Casca would probably be the longest, though there are a good chunk of chapters where Casca is just not present while Puck is there. Either way, this isn't a competition. I'm just saying that during the time where they first introduced, after that we head right into the flashback arc, which some people might know as the Golden Age era or Golden Age arc, where we really just retell the original Band of the Hawks or Band of the Falcons, depending on whatever translation you read it as. And over there, even though the two don't really interact with one another because their paths don't cross just yet, we see through various snippets and various little detours that the two, even though their travels don't intersect, the travels do actually run parallel. So, for example, one time Guts was injured in one of the battles, and Judo actually threw a bag of pixie dust at him, telling him that it was like kind of like a miracle drug. And we know that he says that he got that bag of pixie dust from a friendly pixie. Fairy dust, pixie dust. I'm just gonna use the terms interchangeably. He got that bag from a friendly pixie while he was with traveling merchants, and we know that Puck himself was with a band of traveling merchants before being captured, so we can pretty much say that one is with the other. Another time we saw is that Puck was around a fortune teller lady who vaguely spoiled the eclipse and its happenings. And the two, pretty much their paths don't technically intersect, but they run parallel. And there's very few characters actually within the story who have parallel stories, parallel storylines happening at the same time. If my memory serves correctly, Guts is like the plot A, and then Griffith is like the plot A. .1 or something. There's like a AB or something like that. The two are very closely interlinked, and we flip-flop from one to the other every so often. The other one that has its own little section was Rykard when he was exploring Falconia for the first time. There was a little bit of a snippet for that, and we can see that he's probably going to become important. If you watch my last video, he's probably going to become important later on in the story. That's the second instance, and the last instance I can really think of was Puck. Even though it did happen in a flashback, and it's like a second plot, a B plot in a flashback, but still, it's something that did happen. Well, when Puck comes into Guts' life, it's technically at Guts' lowest point in his life. So this was right after when the eclipse happened. He survives it along with Casca, but he's just been destroyed both physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. The reason why they both meet is because Guts is just he almost had a death wish. He was trying to bring down as many apostles as he can with him, and he was willing to do anything for that. When he met him, he didn't really give two shits about anybody and their feelings or anything like that. And that's pretty much, you have to keep in mind, that's how they first met. And when Puck follows him around, Puck, luckily, what I really like about him is that he's a very opinionated character. He doesn't fall in line with anybody. Sure, some people might say things to him that makes him change his mind, but overall, he's pretty set in stone as to what he wants to do with his life. If he feels that there's a good reason to do something, he'll say it. If he feels there's a bad reason to do something, he'll also say it. And at the time that the two meet, for a good while, Puck actually played the role as both the moral compass and the moonmaker. So by moral compass, one thing to know is that even though Guts was really hating Griffith for what he had done, I think part of him was slowly becoming Griffith-esque in the way that he sees other people. So for a good while, he was very gung-ho on killing the apostles, and his mind was very set in stone with just in killing the apostles. And he was willing to commit atrocities. He was willing to give up on others and that kind of stuff. Which, even though there's kind of like a disconnect between him and Griffith, the motivations are kind of the same, in the sense that Griffith, when he has his big overall goal being to conquer his own land and become the ruler of all, he was willing to give anything to achieve that. And in that sense, Guts had a mini version of that. So I feel like if Puck wasn't there, Guts would have been a much darker, much more terrible person. And the fact that he had like that little realization that he had something to protect in the form of Casca is, in part at least, thanks to Puck, who kind of realigns his priorities. Even though Guts might not like it in the moment, he kind of recognizes the fact that he was going down a wrong path, and I think we could attribute a lot of that switch around to Puck, the little fairy dude. Apart from that, there's also the Moonmaker. So at that specific time within the story, Guts is very broody, understandably so. It's not something that anybody would want to experience, and it's not something that anybody would probably be able to accept or come back from. But Guts was in a very dark place, and even though, if you've ever been in a dark place, sometimes like a good laugh just brings you out of it, even temporarily. And Puck did do that. A lot of times Guts is annoyed by what Puck does, but every so often Puck says something funny or does something dumb, and it gets a chuckle out of Guts. And sometimes, the chuckle becomes a laugh, a hearty laugh, and it kind of revitalizes him. And in that sense, we know that that's true because when because when Guts returns to Rykert, where he had left Casca, even though he was angry for Casca and he showed a lot of that anger to Rykert, the fact that even Rykert was able to notice that Guts' mood overall has been more lightened by Puck, and even thanks to Guy, we know that Puck at least is a positive influence mentally to the Black Swordsman. And from there, I think overall we would say that since that time, Guts is definitely in a better mental state than he was at the end of the eclipse. Obviously, he has had time to grieve and time to process, but Puck definitely did do some of that work, some of that legwork to get him back in path. Apart from that, I guess we can also talk about him as a companion. So while a lot of his companions are able to do some stuff good and some stuff bad, some of them follow Guts around because they're useful, such as Shirky, for example, who's a great magician, great wizard, I suppose is a better word. But Puck is not exactly the greatest fighter, but he still has his own uses. So for one, for example, he's a good scout, especially considering the fact he's a small person who can fly. So for example, we saw that he was able to sneak the keys out from a prison and bring those keys to Guts, who was then able to free himself. That's some sort of utility. He's definitely a scout type because he could get into things, and in fact he's able to survive situations that would kill most thanks to finding neat little places to hide and stuff like that. He's also an empath. We haven't really explored it too much in recent times, but at least early on when it was really just Guts and Puck, we do see that Puck is an empath, and in that sense makes him an even better scout because he can even feel negative intentions coming from afar, and he can tell Guts to, if not get away, then to at least get yourself ready to fight these guys or fight these monsters or something like that. So that's definitely a utility. Then there's obviously the original reason why Guts allowed Puck to stay around. It was his healing dust. So again, in more recent times, especially since Guts' injuries have been getting worse and worse, we don't use too much of the pixie or the fairy dust anymore, but it's still a useful little thing, and we know it can heal a lot of major injuries. It can make major injuries into minor injuries, and it can heal minor injuries relatively quickly, and that's definitely a plus. And then finally, he also has like this flashing ability. He can kind of do like a flashbang-esque kind of thing where he just like blinds his opponents and gets away. Apart from that, that's really his main power suite. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't really fight in the traditional sense. He's more there to provide scouting powers, scouting abilities, and little annoyances, really. Now let's talk about what I could see in the future for Puck. So Puck, like I said, for the most part, he's really served as a comedic effect kind of character. He brings a little bit of levity to darker situations, and in fact, he's actually like the only character who could break the fourth wall, I believe, and he can kind of even speak directly to viewers. So he's, I guess, technically like the most conscient being within the story. And apart from that, he's always like this jokester, and the author really just used Puck to bring a little bit of sugar to a bitter situation. But is he really going to be relegated to simply a joke character or simply comedic relief? It's hard to say. I like to think that there's good reasons why different parts of the story are introduced, and for the most part, the writing has allowed itself to digest a lot of that and really use every part of the story. Even like these minor stories or these minor characters that we saw early on, that we thought were kind of throwaways, still made some kind of impact or some kind of or play some kind of role, big or small, in future storylines. And then in terms of just what Puck can become, I mean, for a little while, some were speculating before we met who exactly is the Flower Storm Monarch. There were some speculation that maybe Puck was the Monarch, or he was just like screwing around the world. I mean, we know that's not him, but is he going to play a bigger role? At the very least, we know that he's the one who keeps holding the Behemoth. Is he perhaps going to make a wish? We never actually seen a person from the astral world use the Behemoth to make a wish. He's like really infatuated with the Behemoth from the Slug Lord, and it's hard to say. Maybe he's the one that wants to use it. It's not. I guess it would kind of make sense, but I don't know what would the end goal. Considering the Behemoth doesn't. It grants wishes, but it grants wishes in the form of kind of like a cursed monkey paw, where it's like, I want to take away the pain, so they just like remove your pain receptors, which is not technically what you want. I don't believe the Behemoth has actually granted a wish that doesn't involve body modification. So in that sense, if Puck does use it, is he going to become like some kind of heavenly figure to try and help Guts? It's hard to say. I think there's some way to see it. I don't personally have any strong thoughts. The reason why I made this video is really because I've been looking at different parts of Berserk, and I could vaguely understand where everything is going to fit in, but Puck was different. I really wasn't sure where was he going to fit in and how does he fit in. There's a lot of things that make sense, like him keeping the Behelit allows the Behelit to stay repaying the story and open that up as an option to Guts in the future. But why does it need to be Puck? I'm not sure yet. We understand that they went to Elfheim just because to help repair Casca, and that was a success, and that was Puck's main goal. But his job doesn't feel done either, so it's hard to say. And I don't, like I said, I didn't have any concrete thoughts about this video. I was wondering if you guys had a good idea or a good headspace as to where you think Puck is gonna fall. And if you do, please leave your thoughts in the comments, and maybe that would awaken some kind of inspiration to me, because right now to me Puck is like this wild card that I'm not really sure, is he going to be really important, or is he going to just be a throwaway character? Well, he's definitely way too involved in the story to be a throwaway, but you know what I mean. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this content, please go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, or comment, whatever works really. I don't really mind. In any case, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time, dummies.